Scary. The numbers were scary.
Hello, refiners. This is my MDR workstation, a 1986 Kaypro 1 CPM machine. It comes from an early class of computers known as luggables, in that you could take the keyboard, strap it to the front, and carry it around using a handle on the back. It features a 9-inch screen, two 5¼ inch floppy drives, and no hard drive. My family actually had two of these. I believe the other was a Kapro 2, which oddly enough predated the Kapro 1. We all used it for varying purposes, my mother for her teaching, my father for his writing, my sisters for their schoolwork, and me for my angst-ridden preteen diary. Of course, we also used it for the high-def games that came included with it. When I got hooked on the Apple TV show Severance, created by Dan Erickson and Ben Stiller, one of the things that really spoke to me were the retro computers that the characters in MDR used to refine the numbers. It was only much later that I saw an interview on The Verge with Ben Stiller and Adam Scott and learned that the inspiration came from the Rhode Island Computer Museum, a place quite close to where I live and work.
Pat Miller, our prop master, she went to the Rhode Island Museum of Computers to research those, and then came up with this design.
And I know the museum has at least one Kaypro, and while it's not a certainty that the Kaypro had anything to do with the design, it is within the realm of possibility. Looking through the Kaypro Quick Start Guide, there are some definite similarities between this and the Lumen literature that we see featured in the show, specifically the somewhat unsettling anthropomorphic images. All of this brought to the front of my mind a project related to this Kaypro that I started more than a decade ago. This machine originally belonged to my father, and he was one of a kind, a gentle soul and an artist who unfortunately never found much success in his art.
He never quite found his thing.
Towards the end of his life, he was working on a novel about his experiences in the Vietnam War as an embedded correspondent. This computer was his modern-day typewriter, recording his thoughts in a small apartment above a bodega between shifts as a New York City taxicab driver. When he died in 1989, I inherited this machine. I used it for a time, but when I upgraded to a blazingly fast 38620 with two 40-megabyte hard drives sometime in 1992, the Kaypro ended up stored away in a closet along with his discs. His unfinished novel became part of his legacy, an oft-repeated legend, even mentioned many years later in a poem one of his friends wrote in his memory. In 2014, a full 25 years after his death, I got the bug to see what, if anything, I could recover of his writings from this machine. The daisy wheel printer that had come paired with the Kaypro had long since shuffled off its mortal coil, so printing and scanning wasn't really a good option. I briefly considered setting up a camera on a tripod to take photos of the CRT screen page by page and then run those resultant images through an OCR program, but this would have been a Sisyphean task. Fortunately, I had the advantage of the original documentation, and I was ultimately able to figure out that through a series of obscure CPM commands and a chain of adapter cables, I could trick the Kaypro into talking to the MacBook by making the Kaypro think that the MacBook was a printer. I could then go to WordStar, the word processing program, print the document, and then capture the output on the Mac side. I even recorded the step-by-step process at the time with the dreams of creating a YouTube tutorial for the 3 other people in the universe who might find this interesting. The footage sat sequestered away in a forgotten iMovie archive until now, nearly 11 years later, I found the story to tie it all together, albeit loosely. So, if you are one of those 3 people, here's how I did it. If it really isn't your jam, maybe skip to the end where there's a message from the grave. I would like to take a second here and point out the similarities between this shot that I did in 2014 And the one early in season 2 where Helena couldn't find the switch on the MDR machine, which was an early clue that she was not actually Ellie. Coincidence? So in the end, what did I find on the machine? A nearly complete magnum opus ready for publication? Unfortunately, no. It was mostly notes and a few unfinished chapters. There was definitely some interesting and rather graphic war imagery in there, but nothing close to complete. I did find some other letters and writings that shed some light on his state of mind towards the end of his life. So in the end, was all this worth it? I would say definitely yes, if for no other reason than learning a little bit more about my father and the nerdy technical challenge of getting these two distant cousins to talk to each other. I'm going to close this out with a word from the man himself, the previously promised message from the grave. This was recorded in 1976, presumably for an early public access cable TV show.
You know, we think of computers. We fear computers that they might take over the work of our minds in shaping our direction and our future. You know, but the truth is, we're in control of those computers. And right now, what we're doing is we are in control of our lack of freedom. We fear freedom right now. It's new. It's not what we thought it was going to be. It's not what is now.